Welcome back to the Gruber Company's morning show. This is our EV portion. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning and welcome.
I asked AI for our background today to dig into their understanding of Formula One racing and create a new studio centered around that concept or that image. And that's what we got. It is kind of a new studio. It's got some cool cars.
Can you scoot into the frame a little bit, please?
Yeah.
I'm going to pull up the background for the audience.
Nice theme there. I like the theme a lot of it.
Yeah, and for those of you on Instagram, I know we're still green screen, and Instagram is popping up as one of our most active platforms currently, and we're going to improve that.
Now you can see the image better with that race car.
Yeah, there we go. Very nice. And you know, for those of you that are purists, AI doesn't quite get the details correct. So it's not us asking for these incorrect elements on these race cars, but it is intriguing. And to someone unfamiliar with Formula One racing, this looks very convincing to me.
You mean the larger front wheels than back wheels are not intentional?
I didn't even notice that, but yeah, that could be one of those. Unless it's front wheel drive, I suppose.
Yeah, I suppose.
And it looks like the shooting room at Bitfire Studios.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was quite a tour that we took months ago. Someday we'll have a studio like that too, guys. So one of the first things I wanted to lead with was there was a press conference a while ago, and apparently it was Elon up on stage, and somebody asked Elon, why don't you guys make motorcycles? And I found Elon's comment kind of humorous. He said, I like motorcycles. In fact, I spent 8 years with a dirt bike, and he enjoyed it. And but he said that he almost got killed by a truck one day on his motorcycle, and from that moment forward, he's never going to indulge in making electric motorcycles or making motorcycles, period.
You know, I have to admit, I'm not sure if I've ever known anybody, Richard included over here, who has ridden a motorcycle in traffic like here in Phoenix on more than a couple months, who hasn't been in some sort of wreck.
Really? Yeah.
9
wrecks for Richard.
9.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've gone down 9 times. 2 of those were from other people just straight up hitting me. I just want to encourage Elon. It's worth it. Still ride. I don't have the bike anymore because of baby girl, but none of those crashes prevented me. So come on, Elon. I want a Tesla bike. Come on.
We want an electric motorcycle. Yes. All right. So we have a few things to cover with you guys this morning. One of the pictures I wanted to pop up here this is a 1917 electric truck charging station. And, we tend to forget that this is a second coming of electric vehicles. They were prominent at one point in history. They were easier to produce, less expensive at the time. And this picture shows trucks, electric trucks. Now remember, this is old technology. These were DC motors. They had large wet cell batteries, and they probably had a really questionable range. I think you have some statistics on.
Yeah, I think the range usually was about 50 miles or so. And the reason that you could plug these trucks right into the electricity in the ground, these ground plugs, is likely because the whole building is probably powered on DC, because AC electricity was there was a lot of conflict between the Thomas Edison group, which was DC related, and the Nikola Tesla group, which was all about AC. And it wasn't until a little bit after this that AC really took over as far as the electrical network format.
Sure. One of the things that really clinched the deal for AC was the development of a hydroelectric power like Niagara Falls, for example.
Mm-hmm.
They had to get power 400 or 500 miles to New York City. Well, with DC voltages, you would have a line loss that would end up with a trickle, if anything, kind of like the Colorado River by the time it gets to Mexico.
Yes.
There wouldn't be much left.
Yes, and I think you're exactly right. I think it actually was the development of hydroelectric on Niagara that did that.
And then the efficiencies that you end up getting, reducing wire sizes by boosting your voltage to the hundreds of thousands or even millions of volt reduces the wire size tremendously. So there are a lot of gains. And the reason that worked is because of transformer technology.
Right.
You were able to step up and step down voltages, which you couldn't do with DC unless you built a DC to DC converter, which back then would have been difficult without semiconductors. It would have been pretty massive.
Yeah, it would have been really difficult. I don't even know how they would have done that.
Vacuum
honestly.
tubes? No, vacuum tubes weren't even around then.
No, they weren't around then. They weren't invented until the 40s.
Yeah. So it's,
Maybe a little earlier than that. But the main thing that killed this first generation of electric vehicles was none of this stuff.
Mhm.
It was simply that Henry Ford built a car that could do everything that these trucks could do for about a third the price.
Yep, that, and they got rid of the crank starter method on the ICE vehicles, and which they claimed that the ladies would have a hard time with, and some broken wrists to boot, because when that backfired and you didn't catch it just right, it would reverse the opposite direction during a detonation, and that could really raise havoc with the bones in your body.
You're breaking wrists and breaking arms and stuff like that.
Right. All right. So another article that I have for you guys is GM apparently dismissed Tesla early on in the game as engineers playing with laptop batteries. And this was a statement that was made by a former GM executive, Steve Gursky. And this was pretty much the prevailing attitude by the ICE manufacturers, most prominently GM at this point, toward all electric vehicle makers, and they regarded them, again, as a bunch of engineers playing with laptop batteries. Now, the laptop battery concept with electric vehicles was really something that was popularized by Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning. The earlier generations of EVs either had wet cells, lead acid, or in the case of the T0 in 1997, it had AGM, absorbent glass mat batteries, which is still basically a lead acid battery,
right?
Sulfuric acid with plates. And it was Martin that decided, you know what, for this type of vehicle to be viable, we're going to need something less maintenance and a longer range. The T0 was only good for 80 miles. And by the time they converted it to lithium-ion 18650 cells, the range got closer to 400 miles, and now they knew they had a sustainable, viable invention that could revolutionize transportation. So, again, hats off to Martin and Mark. Elon came in 6 months later as a financial investor, and for having that vision.
Yeah, and at the time, GM was the car company that had tried and had failed. They felt like the EV1 was simply not sustainable, and they were arrogant enough to believe corporately that, hey, if we can't do it, then nobody can.
Right.
But the fact is, we know that they were wrong, and General Motors continues to be a car company.
Mm-hmm.
Unless General Motors can get with the program a little bit better, get some more visionary leadership, I would say, they'll never catch Tesla, because Tesla is not a car company. Tesla is a sustainable energy company.
And Tesla was forced into being a tech company very early on because of the major differences between developing ICE-based transportation, which is mostly mechanical, versus an electric vehicle where you now had to consider the software, the electronics to propel a vehicle. So it really forced them into this role fairly early on. And, when you say, how is GM going to transition, for example, their whole legacy, their DNA is based on mechanical excellence, developing ICE engines. And again, we've felt all along, or I felt all along, that it's going to be a very difficult transition or pivot for them to move into this new world of electronics, which is really what these EVs are about.
Yeah, I think it's going to be for all of them. Now, personally, I do happen to think that Gursky, who is now the the CEO of Nikola
Yeah.
Motors. So he's running the EV company. These comments came out after he became head of Nikola. And so I kind of get the feeling that this is a little bit of clickbait, and B, something that he's talking about to help burnish his credentials as an EV guy.
Right, right. And let's not forget that GM could have owned the EV market with the EV1 in the early 1990s and missed that boat completely by miscalculating and deciding that there was no future in electric cars. So they crushed all of them. And as they say, this isn't the first time that GM execs have been dismissive of Tesla. The former GM VP, Bob Lutz, was particularly vocal in his criticism, saying that in as late as 2018, he believed Tesla was headed for the graveyard.
Yeah, he was one of the chorus of people that believed that Tesla could never be profitable, and they were doomed to fail, and they were until they weren't.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. Got a bunch of people chiming in here. YouTube, PYGKLB says, good morning, all.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us. YouTube EV fan, also good morning, with a bunch of emojis, including a little rocket ship and a smiley face with sunglasses.
There we go.
That's us, yes.
John Pokanen on YouTube also says good morning with the little smiley face with sunglasses and a sun.
And the sunshine, a reason for the glass, at least one of the reasons for it.
That's right.
We've got YouTube Banana Man chiming in. He's saying Guten Morgen, which German for good morning. See, the difference between German and English isn't that severe. It, like winter, for example, is the same word. It's spelled the same way. Summer, very close. Instead of S-U-M-M-E-R, it's S-O-M-E-R.
How many generations do you think it's going to be before French, Italian, German, Spanish, English, and a few others are once again all combined into one almost universal language?
Well, you're asking the wrong guy, because I'm way ahead of this game, and this way of communicating that we currently have by making guttural sounds and attempting to find someone that understands that sequence of guttural sounds, which of course varies all over the world.
Oh yes.
I'm looking forward to the time when there is no more need to make any sounds, that we have direct communication. And
That would
of course,
be great.
AI plays into that, and then you get into privacy issues. I mean, that's going to be a huge one when that happens.
Oh, sure.
All right. YouTube, Ramon Hurt, he says, the EV1 was a compliance car because California was pushing emission standards, correct. And the at least GM was attempting to comply. He says they stopped making the EV1 when the government sued the state of California. But again, they completely missed the boat. If they had listened to the people that they had leased them to and developed the consensus, which was, we love these cars.
Yeah.
We don't want you to take it away from us. We'll pay for it. We'll even buy more. But they completely missed that.
Yeah.
Of course, the conspiracy theorists are going to say, well, big oil got involved, and they're the ones that killed us. And but who knows?
Who knows? Hard to tell. On YouTube, AwesomeBlackDude says, I noticed they lowered the price on the Model Y. What's the reason for this?
Well, what happens behind closed doors at Tesla is usually a well-kept secret. But my guess here would be it's one of two things: to maintain market share, which it doesn't seem like they need to do because they own the market. They're 10 years ahead of everybody else. The second reason may be far more altruistic, which is that the Tesla culture and core mission is to replace fossil fuel burners. And maybe with some profits under their belt, they're willing to reduce their amount of profits for this higher calling, which is to finally start saving the planet.
Well, and I think, I'm going to speculate as well here. I think that a lot of this has to do with they're simply passing the savings of the lower lithium and battery costs on to people. I think that's one of the major reasons. And Elon has stated in several occasions in the past he doesn't want to be a luxury car maker. He wants to be the next Ford. And I think when he refers to that, he wants to be the next Henry Ford, who had said things like, I want a Model T in every driveway.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what Tesla is trying to do and executing on that. So I think they lower the price on the Model Ys. They cause a lot of ripples throughout the auto industry when they first started that at the beginning of this year. And it has been to try to push vehicles, but also to try to push vehicles into a lower segment and get wider adoption.
And how many companies are willing to pass on scale of economy savings despite owning the market?
Yeah, there are not very many people or companies that are willing to do that at this point in time. And I think what Tesla's play is not just the EV market share. They're trying to make a play for the automobile market overall, because while Tesla has 60% plus of the EV market is only about 7% of the overall automotive market.
Mm-hmm.
And Tesla wants to get to where they're playing 60% of that market.
Mm-hmm. Worthwhile goal, definitely. YouTube, Seth Love says, good morning, fellas. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. YouTube, Ramon Hurt says, Pete, have you ever heard of Peter Joseph? He has interesting ideas on integrating AI into helping control the planet. You know, thanks for the tip. I have never heard of Peter Joseph, but it's one of my passions, and I will definitely investigate that. We had our AI podcast this last Sunday, and at the end of it, I went on a rant a bit regarding where I thought AI fits into society today. And for those of you interested, we extracted that clip, and it's out on our YouTube site. All right.
And then Ramon Hurt on YouTube has a follow-up comment for that. He says, Peter Joseph is most known for starting the Zeitgeist movement.
Okay. Well, again, more reason to investigate that. Thank you, Ramon. I will be able to report next Sunday, and definitely look that up.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I have some Q3 numbers that I'd like to begin sharing.
Yeah.
You know, Tesla has come out with their Q3 numbers, and I think it's kind of as expected. Tesla did not meet the analysts' expectations. Analysts were expecting Tesla to deliver as many as 473,000 cars this quarter. It seemed like they were completely ignoring the guidance that Tesla gave in the second quarter, with the second quarter investors call, when they said, hey, we're going to be shutting down our factories to retool. By the end of September, the analyst estimates had dropped to about 461,000. Actual production numbers for Tesla is 430,488 cars. Actual deliveries for Tesla is 435,059 cars. Now that's notable because that means that Tesla actually delivered more cars than they sold for the first time in over 2 years. And demand for their cars is staying pretty high on that. Overall, I have kind of a somewhat mixed opinion of this. I'm mostly optimistic. First, Tesla warned that their Q3 deliveries, as I just mentioned, were going to be down. They're taking care of retooling factories for the Cybertruck, and they're taking care of retooling factories for the next version of the Model 3. Secondly, Tesla didn't change their full year guidance, and that's really good news. Tesla early on this year said that they wanted to deliver at least 1.8 million cars, and they're still sticking by that at the end of the third quarter. That means that in order to make that, they'd have to deliver 475,000 cars in the fourth quarter alone. Finally, there's no mention of the Cybertruck, and that's why I have a mixed opinion about this. Elon had said as recently as their second quarter call that they were going to have the first Cybertruck deliveries near the end of the third quarter. And so people have thought and kind of expected that those first customer deliveries would be trickling out by now. They're not, and there's no mention of when they'll start, and there is nothing on the website that says you can order new Cybertrucks at this point in time either. So everything has kind of gone dark on that whole piece, and that's probably the most highly anticipated automobile that Tesla's ever had, and one of the most highly anticipated automobile models ever to come out into the marketplace.
And there was some speculation that maybe Elon, being a showman, is going to wait until Halloween to release this car.
Yes. There is definitely some speculation. There's also some speculation that that Elon's requirement of the 10 micron,
Right.
That 10 micron standard,
Tight parameter. Yeah.
and that's such a tight parameter that he set something that's impossible to attain at a car level. My thinking on that is that he didn't talk about that at a car level. He talked about that at a part level. And while that's still very difficult to attain, it's not nearly as difficult as on a car level. So that's another thing that people are saying, yeah, maybe he's holding off because the company's struggling to maintain or achieve his own standards. So Rivian also gave their third quarter numbers yesterday.
What'd you think of those?
I'm excited about those.
Okay.
Rivian was expected to deliver about 15,500 cars or so, and they delivered 16,300. They actually, they're on track to make or maybe even beat the estimate of 52,000 EVs delivered this year. And it's a pretty exciting time because Rivian is one of those companies that's actually following through with what they're saying they're going to do. The bottom line of any business is you got to produce revenue, and you produce revenue by making product. Rivian is proving that they can make product. So while they're still, the investors are still punishing Rivian because they're still going to have a loss this quarter. They're not making enough electric vehicles to overcome all those fixed costs that they have. They're getting better over time, and this was about 120% improvement over the third quarter of last year, and almost 100% improvement over last quarter.
And there was some buzz, if you remember, a couple of weeks ago that the Wall Street expectation may be incorrect regarding their delivery numbers, and sure enough, it looks like that's what ended up happening.
It does. And Rivian made one other kind of cool announcement. It's getting some mixed reviews in the Rivian community. You can get a mega pack for your new Rivian vehicle. That mega pack will allow your Rivian to have a 400-mile range.
Yeah.
Now, the mega pack does cost about $10,000 more than the next level down, which is a 350-mile range. So that's where the mixed reviews are. People are saying, gee, $200 a mile for extra range, that's an awful lot, when the normal has been in the past with other makers about half that.
Really? Okay. And of course, those prices will come down. But, while we're on the topic of Rivian, if you can throw up the picture titled Rivian. Apparently, there's a company that is taking the Rivian platform. It is called Apocalypse. And Apocalypse Manufacturing took a Rivian R1T and converted it into a high-tech electric beast. This company is known for creating custom off-road vehicles, including Jeep, Ford Bronco, and various trucks. But they say that this is their most ambitious project to date. This is the first time that that this company, Apocalypse, has worked with a Rivian vehicle, and they call it the Nirvana. And it's a true off-the-road warrior boasting 850 horsepower and 11,000 pounds of towing. Now get this, with a 0 to 60 in 3 seconds.
Which is, of course,
Crazy.
your electric vehicle insane.
Can you even do that in dirt?
I don't know. That's a great question.
But yeah, called the Nirvana, all electric, as Joseph Gattes, the founder of Apocalypse Manufacturing, describes this vehicle, he says, "This is a badass truck. It's time, and it looks and acts like one."
Yes, it really does. If we can get that picture thrown up again, I'd be very interested to see on the matte paint, the sharp lines. It's a kind of a cool looking truck.
Yeah. And, the Rivian R1T is not a slouch either. It's already an adventure vehicle with 14, almost 15 inches of ground clearance, and the ability to go through 3 feet of water and rock crawl 100% grade, all with the acceleration of a sports car.
I want to see it rock crawl 100% grade.
Let me see if I can get you guys. The audience is seeing it. For some reason, you guys are not seeing it.
Okay. That you realize a 100% grade is a cliff.
Yeah, yeah.
If it can rock crawl 100% grade, I mean, I would love to see that Rivian. Like, you know, maybe it can climb the El Capitan Rock in Yellowstone or something like that.
Suction cups on the wheels.
Yeah, there we go.
This might have been a reporter too getting a 0 on the wrong spot here, but yeah, fascinating vehicle. You know, there was a video released last week. Sandy Munro actually commented on it, and his quote was, "This is going to sink Jeep." And it was a Chinese vehicle look comparable to
This is
this.
the new BYD.
Yeah, the
Oh,
new
it was
BYD
BYD.
vehicle, though.
Yeah. And this thing started to go into the water, and we're all thinking, okay, well, it's not that deep, right? It eventually got into water that was beyond the height of the vehicle, and there was enough buoyancy in the vehicle where it actually began to float. And then the forward motion was the fact that there were knobby tires that were acting like a propeller, I guess, in the water, moving this vehicle forward. And then it went across a lake, a small lake or something, came out on the other side. And this was the vision that Elon actually tried to give us earlier this year when he said that the Cybertruck could do something like this.
You know, I watched through that video as well, and it's not just the knobby tires. They have almost like the turbine wheels on a Tesla Model S.
Uh-huh.
The wheels themselves are designed to help propel the vehicle through water as they grab the water as they turn.
Of course, I mean, it could be considered ornamental, but it may also have a function.
Yeah.
In that it grabs water and creates some kinetic energy. Fascinating.
Yeah. So it was a fascinating video to see, watching this car driving around through this lake, and it's going slow. It's going a couple miles an hour, but I just thought, wow, that's if that car ever made its way over to the United States, I could see people constantly trying to go across lakes with it.
Well, we have some experience with this because a year or so ago, maybe longer, Uncle Chet here locally, Chet Lord, who at the time bought a Tesla Model S Plaid before they were readily available, ended up paying way too much for it, and decided that he really wanted to prove that a Tesla could become a submarine. So he brought this Plaid to us, and he asked us to waterproof it to the extent that we can. And we closed off some vents, and we put some Vaseline into some of the connectors so that the water conductivity would not mess with the CAN signals. Spent a bit of time with this vehicle, and then it was up to the mechanical engineers to decide how much ballast to put in this car to have it go underwater. And Chet is a true pioneer, also some deep pockets. He actually went out to PIR Raceway here in east of Phoenix, and had a trough dug and then lined with plastic, which they then filled with water over a couple, 3-week span. So you had a true mini lake here that this vehicle now could, with a gradual incline, drive through to prove that a Tesla could become a submarine. Well, we were there for the event. It was 112 out that day, I think, and it took hours for everything to be prepped properly. And for ballast, what he did was he had his team go to Target, and they bought weights, the kind that you use in your home, and bought thousands of pounds of them, and filled the back seat, the front area, and some of the trunk area with these weights to attempt to get the right buoyancy. Well, it turns out, in retrospect, had we had some physicists on this project,
Sure.
they probably would have been able to determine precisely what the weight ratio should be in order for this car to be to overcome the buoyancy aspect. And as it turned out, The car went into the water trough just fine, but it floated a bit and it didn't quite submerge. So the first attempt was a failure. Well, having learned from that, there was a second go around and there was a bit more weight put in the vehicle. And even that didn't quite prove to turn it into a submarine. So there's definitely a science behind buoyancy aspects and, submarines.
I remember, I think this was almost 2 years ago, and I do remember thinking it through and talking a little bit with the guys on social media and saying, yeah, this guy he's not going to do it. He's not going to be successful. I said, all you do, you look up on Google and find out how much buoyancy is in a cubic foot of airspace and multiply it out. And we figured, we did some, rough, almost like cocktail napkin calculations and said, we think that he needs to have at least 12 to 13,000 pounds of weight for the amount of space that he's going to have.
Right.
And he was going on that. This was the first attempt, and he was you have 4,000 pounds or 4,500 for the car, and he'd only put like another 2,000 pounds of weights in the car. Like, yeah, that car's going to float. It's not going to go down at all, which it didn't. And so that was a lot of fun, though.
And then I think the other thing we missed too was the buoyancy of the tires. I mean, they're filled with pressurized air.
Right. And the pressurized air actually ends up increasing the buoyancy more than just a cubic foot for cubic foot.
Right.
Now, I think what he did the second time around, if I remember right, he realized that as well. And he had the tires mostly depressurized, but more importantly, he had them filled about halfway with a substance such as sand or something like that, so that the tires and the substance in them both was taking away from the air buoyancy and was much heavier.
Yeah, well, you got to hand it to him. He was committed. He was he persevered. I remember that the first go around, there was actually a first responder there. And that was part of the insurance requirement for the racetrack to have, a certain level of safety. And they even had a scuba person there just in case they had to retrieve Uncle Chet from under the water if he wasn't able to get out or whatever. So
right.
It was quite a media event, despite the fact that it was hot, extremely hot, out in direct sun, no shade.
Yes. So a couple things here. First on to YouTube, Tesla Tech Guy says hi.
Welcome.
And then Podro Tools on Instagram says, hello there. Please tell me how I can participate in Tesla repair service.
We get that question a lot. Got one yesterday morning, in fact, by email. And we are unaware of any training classes at this point that will train people how to open an independent EV repair shop. It's basically OJT, trial and error. If you're really committed and interested, buy yourself a collision-damaged EV. Try to fix it, put it back together, make it operational. And in the meantime, take lots of notes, network, get involved in forums, get involved, talk to experts, develop a network of expertise that you can tap into. And that would be our suggestion.
Yeah, that's definitely a great suggestion. It's not unlike what has happened in any nascent brand new industry, honestly. Peter L. on YouTube gives a very good correction for us. He says, hi guys, someone explained that the 100% grade as an equal rise to run. So every time you move a foot forward, you're going to go a foot up. Essentially, that means it's a 45-degree angle.
Okay.
And Peter, you are correct. We stand corrected here, and thank you for that.
Yeah, that was perplexing the first time we presented that, where they came up with that number, but that does make perfect sense. Thank you. YouTube, AwesomeBlackDude, he says, any news on whether the newest Roadster will have the capability to air jump or bounce? And what about the Cybertruck? Will it be able to bounce like a Mercedes SUV? We've heard nothing about that capability, although getting stuck in the sand, that would be a nice way to extract, or with a Cybertruck in mud, perhaps. That sounds like a great suggestion for aftermarket, which is very good at modifying vehicles to this extent.
So why do you need a vehicle to air jump or bounce?
think in the case of Mercedes, if you get stuck in the sand, you're driving this in the Gobi Desert, for example, and I saw a video where this thing was able to actually extract itself by doing a bit of bouncing along with forward motion, and eventually got it out. It got itself out of the rut.
Plus, it looks cool at stoplights.
That's the part. Yes, you wouldn't be using this in the Gobi Desert. This would be in South Phoenix, along with the lowriders, impressing them with your Cybertruck and bouncing around.
And Pete, I got a image for you real quick coming up. Richard, you were going to talk about this.
Oh yeah, going back to the Rivian.
Just real quick, this thing
yeah.
looks pretty cool.
That thing
does.
looks exactly like the Warthog from Halo. Now, I don't know if either you, Pete, or Mark know Halo, but it is one of the most popular games, and it started the modern video game culture. But it looks exactly like it. I love it, and I want it.
Just need the giant machine gun on top.
There definitely are some
Must be
similarities there. The light bar across the top. I know a little bit about Halo. I've never played that role of Master Commander before, but it looks like a fun video game, actually.
It does indeed, yes.
It is. It's wholesome.
Wholesome?
As wholesome as a
It's
first-person
wholesome.
shooter
Yep.
can be, right?
Okay. All right, so let's see, what else do we have here? Okay, Lamborghini's back in the news. All right, let's bring up the Lambo Revuelto orange and white. That way we'll see two variations of it. Now, as you know, any of these ICE vehicle manufacturers, even the exotic car manufacturers, even the Italian exotics, are going to have to migrate into electric vehicles. And we've been perplexed for some time how they're going to do that, because part of the mystique of driving one of these exotics isn't just the body style, which would be easy to replicate with an EV. Part of the mystique is that symphony of sound that comes out of that vehicle,
Right.
and the shifting experience. Of course, with electric vehicles, you miss both of those primary components. So we fully expected a company like Lamborghini, which has built great momentum, should have some deep pockets this late into the game, and Ferrari for that matter, to transition into electric vehicles. Instead, Lamborghini came out with a hybrid,
Yeah.
a combination ICE vehicle and EV. And we're all shaking our heads and saying, guys, it's the wrong direction. The goal here is to get emission-free, not to go hybrid, and double the maintenance. Now you have two drivetrains that are distinctly different, that have to be maintained, and most likely a different, preventive maintenance cycles. So we were confused by this, but, we went with it. And it turns out that Lamborghini now has unveiled their newest supercar called the Revuelto. Now, by the way, Lamborghini car model names used to traditionally be the names of great bulls from the bullfighting circuit. And I would imagine that Revuelto may have been one of those bulls. The Huracan, for example. So this is the brand's 60th anniversary. It's been in business for 6 decades. Amazing. And so ahead of its global dynamic debut at the Autodromo Piero Taruffi in Vallelunga, Lamborghini hired Andrea Caldarelli. Notice how I pronounce all those names seamlessly?
Yes, I do. That's why I let you pronounce all these names.
Okay. Who conducted a track testing of this first-of-a-kind V12 hybrid plug-in high-performance electric vehicle on a famed Roman circuit. And again, this is a major pivot for Lamborghini to actually admit that they're going to have to move into the EV space, and they're doing it very gently and delicately, rather than just diving into it and making a Rimac type over-the-top exotic electric EV
For $2 million.
for $2 million. Yes. But what they're claiming is that they are blending their renowned performance capabilities, and they do have enormous engineering expertise in these wonderful 12-cylinder engines, and transmissions for that matter,
Mm-hmm.
with an innovative electric technology. Now, it doesn't say that they're using someone else's tech. This would have been a good opportunity to announce that and say, hey, we're going to use Lucid's drivetrain,
Yeah.
which would have been a major plug for them. They seem to have, and I'm going to carefully phrase that, seem to have developed their own EV drivetrain, which of course is concerning because who gets it right the first time? You know, even Tesla didn't get it right the first time. But it will be a supercar. So this will be a V12 with, let me see how many electric. Here it is, V12 engine with 3 electric motors on a carbon fiber chassis with a 1015 CV powertrain. Great aerodynamics from the looks of it, which is one of the things that Lamborghini is known for. And you know, guys, in that world, you have to have stellar aerodynamics because you're talking about 200-mile-an-hour cars.
Right.
And you can't have them, you know, taking wing and blowing out into the weeds. You have to have downforce. You have to control all of that. So this will be they will race this thing in the 2024 season at IMSA and WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, driving this new Lamborghini SC63, they call it.
This particular Lamborghini also comes with nearly 30% more horsepower than the latest iteration or generation of the Aventador.
Mm-hmm.
So the Aventador latest 6th generation car was around 700 horses, and this one is up above 1,000 horsepower. My own take, it's a $650,000 car. Whoever wants that car is probably going to be able to afford maintenance on 2 different types of motors.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
So, you know, if I have the money to be able to do that, man, it's a beautiful supercar. It's you know, if I want the real pickup of a true electric vehicle with the growl of a V12 engine and not some sort of little engine that's been spiced up to try to sound big, just a legitimately big engine. This is the car for me.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm the other 99.9% of the world, it's not.
And like Jesse pointed out, had they gone with a 100% EV drivetrain like the Rimac, maybe this would have been a $2 million car instead of a $650,000 car.
Yes.
Yeah,
very
still for
possible.
650,000. That's like, I think I was looking on Zillow the other day for a house. It was like 400,000. And I'm like, man, that's pricey.
Yeah, but Jesse, house, supercar, which do you think you're going to have more fun in?
Yeah, that's a good point.
So you live in your car, you know? Hey.
Yeah. All right. So TikTok, RP is chiming in. He says, hey, guys, 20-year auto electrical technician and Tesla owner here from Michigan. Well, thank you for joining us. 20-year, okay, and a Tesla owner. TikTok, Van Goatwagon is joining us. He says, RP, we won't hold that against you. LOL, all good. And I was wondering when Niles was going to chime in.
Yes. Weber State University says that the HEV Certificate of Proficiency provides students with entry-level hybrid and electric vehicle training to meet industry demands. So that's from Weber State. He says, by Google search, if you go to electric vehicle training on Google search, he says there are places now that are offering training at different levels. No idea yet if they're good, though.
Yeah.
Thank you, Niles.
Yeah, thank you for that feedback. Actually, when we did an EV car show this last weekend, Saturday, Mike Manning went down, took our Roadster VIN 711, and he said that people were really intrigued by our Chinese Roadsters, you know, seeing a Roadster.
Oh, sure.
And, yeah. But he said there was a booth there for a local EV training course. And, you know, in retrospect, I'll bet you that was Legacy EV, who does have an EV primer or training course. And they're the people that do EV conversions, by the way, ICE to EV. So there would be some expertise there. All right, so they're asking now, Niles, we're going to ask you, is it a long I or is it Niels as in Niels Borman? We're going to find out.
Just Niels Bohr. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, Niels Bohr. Right, right.
On Instagram, Mustafa Faber 313 says, "This country, Morocco or USA?"
Okay. Thank you for joining us. Yeah.
Thank you.
TikTok RP says the Tesla is a 2014 and does 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds. So it's the around town vehicle. Yep.
That means 2.8 seconds. That means he's probably, if it's a 2014, at a minimum has the Performance Plus.
Yeah.
Was insane mode or
I don't think they
or
came out with
ludicrous mode?
ludicrous mode until 2017. You guys can correct us here. But yeah, that is a very noteworthy 0 to 60 time. Before this century, you didn't see cars under 3 seconds unless it was top fuel dragsters, and certainly wasn't a grocery getting family sedan that was able to tick off that kind of 0 to 60.
No, I mean nobody would have said, yeah, my around the town car is my car that gets 2.8 seconds 0 to 60.
Nalvers has a good question on YouTube. He says, how come there hasn't been any real push to develop any post-secondary educational training where people can learn to work on electric vehicles? Well, my take on this is educators are typically fairly poorly paid. And when given an opportunity to work in the industry and make double or triple what they're making as an educator, that's what most people are going to gravitate towards. And of course, the learning institutions, they're usually poorly funded. And in a new burgeoning industry like this, you're not going to have an abundance of students. So my take on this would be, first of all, a shortage of skilled labor to throw at something like this.
Mm-hmm.
And, secondly, the fact that there isn't much pay in it at this point in time.
My take is similar. If you go back to the computer industry and the information revolution that really got started, when was that start? Probably the mid 1950s or so is really when the mainframes started to come out and the industry started to gravitate. Go forward 30 years to the mid 1980s. That's when I'm going to college, and I'm going there for a computer information systems degree. I'm learning on these old mainframes. I'm a young guy saying these mainframes might get me the certificate that'll give me my money per year for a job, but I know that that's not where the future is going in this industry. The future is going to the personal computer, which at the time was some sort of a desktop computer, an 80286 by Intel was typically it. That's 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
We're only about 15 years into the new generation electric vehicle revolution.
Mm-hmm.
The Roadster was the first one out. The Nissan Leaf was out a year or so later. It was another 3 years beyond that before the Model S came out. Volume electric vehicles didn't start coming out till 5 or 6 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
because the Nissan Leaf wasn't it wasn't setting the world on fire. Even the Prius, which is probably the closest thing that you would have to electric, only came out in 2001. That's only 22 years ago. So my take is there simply hasn't been enough time to develop people who have both the experience and the desire to teach others,
Mm-hmm.
and to take a lower paying job than what they could earn in industry in order to do that.
While you were saying that, another thing jumped to mind for me. I went to a vocational high school in Rochester, New York, Edison Technical, Industrial and Vocational High School.
Mm-hmm.
And we had various trades, carpentry, welding. There was an electrical division. And I remember the teachers that we had in those courses. They were typically semi-retired people. They were no longer able to go out and work the contracting jobs in the electrical world. So they became educators. That was Mr. Smith, my electrical teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. McClellan, the welding teacher. He was past retirement, but he wasn't going to be able to go out there and work out in the hot and cold and lift the rebar and do all of the weld inside the tanks and all of that. And then Mr. Huntoon, carpentry, same thing, construction. He became an educator toward the end of his life. This industry hasn't been around long enough to have people gone through the years of gaining expertise to then eventually no longer want to work out in the shop area on cars and become an educator. But those would be ideal individuals for this type of skill.
Yes, and that's exactly it. I think of my programming teacher, Mr. Larison, or Mr. Strick, another programming teacher. Mr. Strick taught COBOL, Mr. Larison taught Pascal, and I also think back to when I was in high school in Alaska, taking a programming class from my teacher, and my teacher could not explain the concept of procedures, which in a program, you try to keep your program modular. It simplifies it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a procedure or a function. You have one input, you do something to that input, and you have one output. That function becomes its own little slice of program.
Mm-hmm.
My high school teacher didn't understand that. Why? Because he was picking up the book, and he was about a week ahead of us students.
Okay. Yeah.
But the college guys were the guys that had been working in the banks for 15 or 20 or 30 years. And most of them were the same way. They were either retired or semi-retired,
Mm-hmm.
had the altruistic idea of, I want to give back to the community. And so they would say, I'm tired of the rat race and the grind.
Right.
And so they would go in and they would come to school, they become professors, and they teach us students. You're right. We don't have that yet.
What you've described as the critical distinction between theoretical knowledge and practical application.
Yeah.
And for trades like what we are describing, practical application definitely is far more important than the theoretical book knowledge.
Yeah,
Was accumulated.
by all means. So Nolver, I think that's how come there hasn't been any real rush yet. I think there's way more demand than there is in supply of people who want to learn. There just isn't enough people to teach yet.
Good question, Olvers. Thank you. Facebook, Reynold Peterson says, madness, why the growl?
And, that might be what I was talking about with the Lamborghini.
Oh, okay.
The growl of a V12 motor. And that's, I don't know how to say it other than you have to listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember listening to your ViperACR. There was a particular sound to that car idling that was so unlike anything else you could hear on the road around. And it's because it was a large aspirated V10. And when it sat and idled, it would just kind of rumble. And to me, it's almost like an animal growling.
Mm-hmm. It was music. Farzad Misbahi, who was on our podcast a 3 months ago, I think summarized it perfectly regarding these exotics. And he said, first of all, Ferrari makes works of art. Physically pleasing, definitely works of art. And he said the sound that comes from those cars is like a symphony orchestra to a gearhead.
Sure.
Now, having said that, what about these, I can't use the term with the Asian cars, but that raspy sound that you get, is that truly music to some people's ears? I can't relate to it.
Some people think it's the coolest thing in the world. Yeah, I don't get it.
I don't get it.
Yeah, they spend thousands to get the sound, and then proudly parade around making that raspy, leaf blower sound as they're driving down the road.
Leaf blower.
Yeah, they they call their car something really cool. I would call it a leaf blower or a weed eater.
Right. All right. Wayne Levitt with YouTube says, motorbike riders here are called temporary Australians.
And I think he might have meant temporary
Australians. Okay. All right.
And yes, yeah. Even though there are far few people in Australia than here in the United States, I could get that.
YouTube, Seth Love, I feel the learning aspect is because the constant changes. Good point. Yes, it's a moving target in the EV world, and it's because it's a emerging technology, and it's going to go through all kinds of gyrations and variations until the designs really begin to finalize and gel. All these updates and improvements. Yes, exactly. And then, of course, we have the fact that technology is improving on an exponential scale now. And even if it were to settle and we get the improvements, there's always something newer, better that will come along.
Yeah, one of the best things you can hope for is going to be to have train people on 2 or 3 year old technology and know that when they get into the marketplace, when it's time to actually do the work, there's going to be some retraining required, but you're not starting at zero.
Yeah.
You're starting at something that's 2 years old or that's 3 years old.
Yeah. Lightning Rod says, hello from Thunder Bay. Heat warnings here today. Okay.
Lightning Rod. We're not there anymore.
Oh, it's actually cool this morning. In fact, behind me is a sweater that I wore because I'm driving a convertible Roadster now. And when I leave the house at 6:30 in the morning, it can get chilly with the wind chill.
Yeah, I mean, it's, 63 degrees. That's what we were this morning. So that
Really?
you think of that, very, very comfortable.
Mhm.
Now, I have ridden motorcycle and driven motorcycle before. 63 degrees when you're going 60 miles an hour
Mm-hmm.
is like freezing.
Oh, try it at like 20 degrees. You'll get frostbite.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So even a really temperate temperature, when you're driving fast, it feels so much colder.
Mm-hmm. All right. So Niles is saying, well, okay then. In English, the closest would be Nils as in diesel. So it's
So Niels
Niels.
as in
It's
diesel.
Niels.
Niels. Okay. Niels Bohr. All right. Jesse was right, which is rare, but he was right this time.
Ouch. That's brutal, dude.
I couldn't let that slide. He says, I was hoping to send a long version of the answer by email as a convincing cloned Pete announcement. Think of Niels on wheels. There you go. All right.
There we go.
We have a new way of announcing you now, Niels. Thank you.
On TikTok, Van Gogh Wagon says the new Prius looks awesome. I'd drive it.
Really? Okay.
Van Gogh, I have to agree with you. The newest Prius actually looks like a reasonable automobile.
Okay. Finally.
It's just my opinion that 2001 to about 2013 or 14 Toyota Prius was the single ugliest car that I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, it was not a design winner, but boy, the practicality, the 50 miles range,
There's nothing like it. I mean, that you could have that 40 or 50 mile complete electric range, 55 or 60 miles to the gallon, and it's a hatchback.
Mhm.
You have all kinds of room as well. So yeah, it was pretty cool, but
Right.
I would never drive.
All right. I've got a topic here that we can insert in this podcast, but it will be more meaningful tomorrow during our Tesla Roadster podcast. I got an unusual email last night, and here's the headline. It says, update to classic Roadster high voltage battery pack price. And I had this sinking feeling because I knew all along that this would change.
Yeah.
It was last updated October 2nd, 2023. And what this bulletin said was, on October 2nd, 2023, we are increasing the price of the classic Roadster 3.0 battery pack upgrade from $29,000 US to $40,000 US. This price has not been increased since its launch in 2015, and now more accurately reflects the current complexity in building these battery packs. Now, this was a unofficial email that was sent to us, so there's nothing yet official from Tesla.
Right.
First thing I did was I reached out to Tesla and I asked them whether this was true, what the rollout would be, what the impact would be on people waiting in queue, and I have not heard back yet. And I promised them that tomorrow at the Tesla Roadster podcast, whatever information they provide us, we will disseminate. Now, this statement or this bulletin was already announced on Facebook, and I was going to hold off until it finally became confirmed. But because it was announced on Facebook, I figured that Tesla would probably want to get in front of this announcement. So I did post this on Facebook as well. And there's some caveats here, which I'm going to talk tomorrow about in much greater detail. But the bottom line here is, folks, we have run numbers on this Tesla Roadster replacement battery pack since we got involved with Tesla Roadsters, because anyone in our business, aftermarket,
Right.
is going to be interested in competing with the current offerings. And we thought if we can create a faster, better, lighter, cheaper battery pack, this would be something that, aftermarket would be interested in. Well, every time we ran these spreadsheets, we would do the bill of materials, we would look at the labor costs, we would look at the mold costs, we would look at the cell costs, and then the amount of production time to develop something like this. We kept saying Tesla is doing this under cost. And it's not the first time Tesla has sold anything under cost. The Tesla Roadster was being sold under cost for some period of time, and had they continued with it, there would be no Tesla today. It was the Model S that actually put them on the map and gave them the badly needed profitability to remain in business. No one disputes that. So this Tesla battery pack is generously being offered by Tesla, in our opinion, under cost. And we were just waiting to see when they would wake up, realize, maybe we should cover our costs or at least break even on this. Well, it looks like that's what has happened. And I'm going to go in much greater detail tomorrow, but just to give you some idea of why this is happening. Granted, cell costs may be coming down, but not dramatically. However, production costs will continue to go up. They make these batteries in Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley labor rates are almost double what they are in other parts of the country. The amount of labor involved to put a battery like this together without robotics, and if they invested in robotics, then it puts them even further underwater, because there are only 2,000 customers out there that need this pack. I can't imagine that they're now gaining scale of economies by investing in robotics. This is hand assembly time, folks. And what this means is you have 6,831 cells in this battery pack. You now have to weld a bonding wire onto both sides of the cell. So it's 2 times 6,831, and that has to be done by hand. Every single wire has to be attached to that cell and then ultrasonically welded on both the positive portion of that cell and the negative portion of that cell. But then you have other things that play into this. The molds, for example, that make the clamshells. Those were obsolete 2 years ago when we looked into it. And I'll tell you tomorrow what the cost was of recreating molds for that clamshell. It would definitely have changed the price picture or swayed it even further. So until tomorrow, all we know right now is there's an unofficial announcement, origin unknown. And if it is true, hopefully we'll have more information by tomorrow, and we'll be able to give you the justifications for an increase like this from 29,000 to 40,000.
Yeah, thank you. One of the things that I've thought of in a company the size of Tesla, because they've got, $250 billion of revenue, 2,000 cars, as Elon has even told you in the past, isn't going to move the needle.
Right.
If they were not intending on moving forward with the battery pack business, then probably they leave it at 29,000, make their last few battery packs, clean up, close up shop, and go home.
Exactly, and get out of the business.
And just get out of the business. The fact to me that they're actually raising the price on this battery pack says that somebody there at Tesla has decided that they have enough consistent demand to be able to keep this as a viable business for some time into the future. And if they're going to keep this as a viable business sometime into the future, they probably better at least get to break even.
Sure. Just like us, we are a manufacturer. We periodically review costs.
Yes.
And costs do change. When the federal government comes along and says, we're going to raise the minimum wage or we're going to mandate certain wage requirements, that has to get passed on to customers. And so it's not unreasonable for a manufacturer to review their costs and make adjustments.
Not at all. We're going through the process. We go through that every year, and we're going through that process right now in our manufacturing facilities. and we're going to be making some cost adjustments at the same time.
And conversely, when there are savings, we pass those on as well.
Oh, yes.
Because it helps us increase our market share.
That's right.
If we have competition. So, I'm sure that this was, if it's true, this was there was a valid reason for doing this, and hopefully we'll get more information to disseminate tomorrow.
Yeah. So I being the optimist that I am, I see that potential upside in this. If it means that they're going to continue to make battery packs available, then I do it if that's what it takes.
Mm-hmm.
Van Goatwagon on TikTok, another comment that he had for us. He says, "Mr. Gruber is my teacher, honestly."
Well, thank you. We do our best to collect information, disseminate, and we love the participation that we get from you guys.
Oh, by all means. On YouTube, Ramon Hurt, another comment about EV training. He says, when it's profitable to open an EV training school, it will be a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Until then, try getting a job at a company that makes EVs. I only have an AS degree, Associate Science degree, in electronics from DeVry University. It is a foot in the door. Schools like UTI should try to get into that space if they aren't already. I can't agree with you more, Ramon, on that foot in the door comment. That's really what you're looking for. If more students can realize that,
Mm-hmm.
the degree that they gets them a foot in the door, gives them a better chance potentially to get a job. But getting the job and keeping the job is about performance, not about schooling.
It's like, for those of you that have read the Think and Grow Rich books by Napoleon Hill, he makes a case in there that there are two methods of compensation. The obvious one is your wage or your salary.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is experience. He says, guess which one is more important?
Yeah.
And, again, if you do get a job at one of these new EV manufacturers, or even Tesla for that matter, pour your heart and soul into the job. Make it a life's calling. And what you're doing is increasing your marketable skills. That first word is important. You're going to be in demand. And any manufacturer is going to reward you financially as your skills grow, because they don't want to lose you. And if it is a marketable skill in a market where there is great demand for those skills, you can write your own ticket. But you have to invest. You have to, and you may not be able to start that job as the supervisor or shop manager. You're probably going to start in a parts room, or maybe even as a janitor.
Right.
But get your foot in the door. Prove that you're interested. Show them your passion. Become inquisitive about what's going on. And, most successful people have started at the bottom. You don't start at the top. You don't have the skills yet.
Even Warren Buffett from Berkshire Hathaway says exactly the same thing. The one thing you can guarantee will never be outpaced by inflation are your skills.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
if you improve your skills, you're making a permanent inflation-proof investment in yourself.
Good comment from YouTube, Ramon Hurt. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's our advice to anyone that isn't going to start a business. The earlier question we had is, how do you get into the EV space? And we're already a business and we want to migrate. Well, a lot of it's going to be OJT.
Yeah. At this point, a lot of it is. YouTube, Crunch to Grace Hopper, like number 12, only, he says, from Newport Beach, catching up from way 55 minutes back. Never too late to replay, but still some time to smash that thumb, y'all.
Okay. Van Goatwagon, updates on the new facility. Yes, the exotic EV car storage facility that's currently being renovated and under construction is the roof is on, but it hasn't been foamed yet. The sprinkler system is being installed this week. It may be done already. They've been working on it since the middle of last week. Skylights are on their way, and it is remarkably beginning to gain momentum. There are 6, 7 air conditioners in the building. They've got the curbs mounted. they're waiting until they foam the roof to
Sure.
finalize and place the units. And so, yeah, it is progressing very nicely. And, amazingly, it took about 22 to 23 months to finally get some momentum.
Yeah.
Batch of red tape, a batch of City of Phoenix delays. And I pity the companies that have a fire, have an infrastructure that is now not running anymore, and aren't able, like we were, to move into other buildings since we have a number of commercial buildings.
Yeah, that kills businesses.
I can't imagine it wouldn't. Yeah.
Yeah, that just kills businesses. And so it's nice to see this going up. Man, I think we ended up with over a year worth of red tape delays on the construction of this building. It was just terrible.
Mm-hmm. Quite a lesson. Van Goat Wagon. Okay, we covered that. How about an update, guys, on the 3 Chinese Roadsters?
Yes.
All right. So 2 have been removed from the sea containers. 1 has gone through a complete dispositioning at this point, reverse engineering, fire up the VMS, look at the mileage, look at the CAC, all of that, and establish timelines, back up the VMS. What we have done now is it's been cleaned inside and out. That was the one that had some rodent damage. Pressure washed the inside, the drivetrain. The only thing that we have not done is done anything with the PPF yet, because on the first Roadster, it looked like it had crystallized with a clear coat, and we're going to be bringing in some PPF experts to give us a sense of direction, where to go from here. That was VIN 1107. VIN 1120, which is a very orange Tesla Roadster, also had some PPF failure, but this time it seems to have remained sticky underneath the cellophane layer, which is typically what's on top of PPF. There's a very thin plastic layer.
Right.
We're now going to, again, confer with the experts and try to establish what kind of a chemical removal process would be least damaging or not damaging at all for the remediation of that. The interior of the car, neither of the cabins, by the way, were affected by rodents, which is a good thing.
That's good.
Underneath the drivetrains, however, the first Roadster, 1107, did have some rodent residue. The second one has minimal and no cable damage or wiring harness damage from rodents chewing into it. So this one will go quite a bit quicker, we think. And again, we're going to then set it aside and wait for the final prognosis on how to handle the PPF removal. The third Roadster is probably going to come out Thursday this week. And again, we're going to look for the removal of a service plug to see if maybe that one has a service plug missing, and we can see what a ESS pack in a Tesla Roadster looks like after 13 years in a coma.
So are you saying then that this second Roadster, the first of the 2 orange Roadsters, did have the service plug plugged in?
It did, yes.
Okay.
Also had a service plug. So optimism springs eternal. We'll see if the third one.
Now, have we gone through the VMS and put 12-volt power onto it yet to determine the mileage of this second Roadster?
We did. The mileage, the first one was 109 miles.
Correct.
The second one is 104 miles.
Okay.
And again, it corroborates what we found out from Tesla is that at some point in time, after finding that there were QC issues as the Roadster rollout occurred, they switched from 30 miles test driving to 100 miles test driving.
Right, right. Now, you had mentioned, speaking of 30 miles test driving, first it was Michael Aldea, one of our podcast listeners, that first disclosed that information to us, and has been since corroborated. But second, you mentioned that we have one Roadster in that is at 38 miles.
Yes, yeah, and that was one of the early generation miles. This is a Roadster that was allegedly never driven, and it will be for sale soon, by the way. Mm-hmm. It was presumed to be an 8-mile Roadster. Instead, it's 38 miles, which would make sense because the 30 miles of test driving.
Right.
It is an Arctic white. Don't have a lot of details for you yet, but it is an immaculate car. And unlike the 3 Chinese Roadsters, which had PPF applied and then sat for 13 years in sea containers. This particular Roadster does not have any of that kind of deterioration and no rodent damage.
Okay.
So this will be an interesting one. We thought that we would never again see a Roadster with this kind of low mileage.
Right. And then when that person from, I think it was New Mexico,
Mhm.
contacted us and said, "Yeah, I've heard about these Chinese Roadsters. I have one. Do you think it's going to be worth anything?"
Yeah, right.
And we're like, "Well, hard to tell. Low mileage Roadsters usually are worth a little bit more than the higher ones. How many miles are you talking about?" "Well, I drove it home from the Tesla delivery point, and I've never driven it since. So it has like 8 miles on it."
Right.
And we were just shaking our heads. That was just amazing.
So yeah, that is another car that's going to be available. The final thing with these 3 Chinese Roadsters is we have crates, and they are full of car parts. And there is allegedly a 4th Roadster that was part of this purchase. We think that, and we haven't gone into the crates yet to do a thorough inventory of what's there, but it's quite likely that this 4th Roadster was the one that went partially through the autopsy process to do the reverse engineering that this EV manufacturer in China was attempting to do to gain some, to harvest the intellectual property, how to build EVs. So all of that will be available soon. And if you're interested in the evolution and pictures, it's out on our website under Roadsters for Sale, and you'll see the 3 Chinese Roadsters, and we're updating that regularly with new images and the progression of this reverse engineering process.
Great. On YouTube, Ramon Hurt has another comment for us too. He says, "Richard, this is to you. Says you look like a tall guy. Are you able to fit in a Roadster? They are so small,
You know this saying that a camera adds 10 pounds? I guess it adds a few inches too, because I am not a tall guy.
It's
I
not-
am 5'8", 5'10", somewhere in there, and but it is a pain in the butt for even me to get in. Now, Mark and Jesse, on the other hand, those are 2 tall gentlemen, so maybe they would be able to answer that question a little bit better.
Let's just say I got into a Roadster once. I was doing some diagnostic. It was back in 2021. Ran my diagnostics and was very, very happy that nobody was around to watch me roll out.
So you found it challenging to get back out.
Yeah, those are not made for large people.
No, as basically, I would try to swing my leg around and it would get caught. So I would try to go out backwards, and then it would catch the top of the Roadster would catch the back of my head. And I really thought, how am I going to do this?
Yeah.
It's the only time I've been in a Roadster, and I decided after that one experience, I doubt that I will get into a Roadster again unless it does not have a top on it.
You know, it reminds me of that viral video that came out 3 months ago or so where this guy finally saved enough money, working all his life, to get a Lamborghini. So he goes to the showroom, picks out the Lamborghini he wants, and he was able to get in the car, unable to get out. And he literally rolled out onto the floor, laughing and giggling the entire way. I think he still bought the car, though.
Oh,
He
that's
must have
funny.
been- yeah.
That's funny. So yes, that's so Ramon there. Pete, you like to call that the Roadster wiggle, if I remember right.
It is. And you know, another thought came to mind. It's possible that some of the reasons that Roadsters get sold is not just because, you know, owners passing or because they have surgeries. Knee surgeries, for example, are real problematic. But it could also be that there is an expanding girth that no longer allows people to get in and out of their cars.
Oh, it could be. Could be.
Crunch to Grace Hopper from YouTube has a question. Been helping my neighbor provide feedback to Tesla on how her Model 3 airbags broke some ribs and chopped her ankles. Sounds like an accident. Had you seen Elon's recent post on weight and size aware airbag enhancements? No. Now that's an interesting new design concept to actually tailor the safety mechanisms in the car to the physical dimensions of the drivers.
That would be a pretty revolutionary advancement.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, think about it. You have So my daughter's 25 years old. She's 5'2", if she wears high shoes,
Mhm.
and she weighs about 100 pounds. She's short enough and small enough that she has to sit very close to that steering wheel in order to be able to reach it to drive.
Right.
If she gets into a wreck, that airbag is not going to hit her in the chest as much as it's going to hit her in the face.
Yeah, true. Good
And
point.
it continues. That's something that we think about. Obviously, she's an adult, and so as such, her muscular structure and bone structure is stronger than a child would be. But if a car was able to adjust its ability to deploy airbags based on that weight and closeness and size of the occupant, that would be revolutionary as far as safety is concerned.
And if it's not voluntary, if it's not a voluntary process by the manufacturer, at some point in time, the regulatory agencies may begin to mandate this.
Yes, definitely. Instagram, Tesla Dave 86 says, great value, great investment, great fun.
And Ramon Hurt with YouTube, he says, LOL at Mark getting into a Roadster.
Oh, I think, Ramon, what you mean is LOL at me getting out of a
getting in
Roadster.
is easy.
Getting in, it's not a hard thing at all.
It just occurred to me, wouldn't that be a great YouTube video, guys? Probably go viral, wouldn't it? Do you think we can get Mark to do this for us?
Mark, I'm already preparing my camera over here.
Oh, he's
boy.
already
Oh,
thinking
boy.
about it. All right, there we go.
So what would it be? Mark's doing the Roadster wiggle?
Yeah, that would
Well,
be a good title. Yeah.
We should do different heights. So we'll start with Victor, or no, we'll start with Cass, right? Getting in and out of a Roadster,
Yes.
and then Victor, and then maybe me, and then somebody in between me and Mark, and then Mark.
That'd
Right.
probably be Jesse would be next. I think Jesse's a little bit shorter than me.
All right, Cass
Oh,
chimed in.
I'm very small.
Well, you would be first then, I suppose. Yeah. All right. Do we have anything else?
We do have one other thing that I
Okay.
thought of, and we could bring up Ford Lightning. Ford is really pushing that, and in spite of some of the rumors that I've seen about Ford discontinuing their electric vehicles and so on and so forth, I think those are just rumors. I don't put any credence in those because Ford has now for 2024 announced a new trim level for their Lightning. Prior to 2024, they had the Pro, which is their base level trim. They had the XLT, the Lariat, and the Platinum trims. A couple months ago, they announced a limited edition Platinum Black trim, which is kind of a higher end trim. Now for 2024, they have the Lightning Flash trim. The Ford has revealed this new trim level for the Lightning EV that's going to sit between the XLT trim and the Lariat trim. It includes, from feedback from their customers, many of the most popular customer features. For example, it has extended range, so it has the bigger 320-mile range battery. It has the bigger 15.5-inch touchscreen, and it has a new heat pump system as well. So the heat pump electric vehicles that use a heat pump system to cool cabins tend to be more efficient in their electric usage than those who have a resistor-based heat pump heating system. Also, the flash trim of the Lightning has the Ford's hands-free driving system that's called Blue Cruise. The base price on the Ford Lightning Flash level is going to be $69,995. That makes this vehicle eligible for the government's $7,500 tax credit by $5. And then the Lariat model, which was priced at this level, now moves up in price to $77,495. The Platinum goes up to $89,995, and the limited edition Platinum goes all the way up to $97,995. The one other big change on this is that Ford is simplifying their battery ranges. For the lower levels, the Pro and the XLT, you're not going to have the option to get the long-range battery anymore. You're going to be stuck with, as it were, the short-range battery. If you want the long-range battery, that's only going to be available in the higher trim options, starting with the Flash. Interestingly as well, the lower mileage range battery is not going to be available in the Flash trim, the Lariat trim, or the Platinum trim. So they're simplifying. The trim that you buy will determine the battery that you get.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. I got a picture I want you guys to throw up. It is called Paul's picture. And this one was kind of interesting because it showed up on Facebook. Paul Erickson is working into developing a Tesla repair facility. And he's done a number of cars already. He's active on the Facebook site, the BMS 029 site.
Mm-hmm.
And chimes in often and shares his experiences. But anyway, he sent me this, and he says, "Thanks for sharing this. I see we are up on the screen with a test." Oh, I'm sorry, that's me commending him for because we're up on the screen. See that flat screen there by the ladder? And so I'm saying thanks for sharing this. I see we're up on the screen with Tesla Roadster in the background. Keep up the good work, Paul. So a shout out to Paul, who watches our podcasts and finds them informative. And feel free to chime in at any point in time, Paul. We'd love to hear from you, what kind of repairs you're doing with the Teslas and the successes that you're having, and possibly answer some of the questions.
Yeah, that's very cool. Seeing us up on the screen in a shop, that's pretty cool.
Yep.
I have one other update we haven't gotten to yet, and it's more of the newsy style update in this case. Here's the latest on the UAW strike, because that really does affect us in the EV space. So I think it's worth mentioning the quick update. The economic impact so far, as reported in the press, is close to $4 billion on the strike, and that involves close to $200 million in losses for at least Ford and General Motors each, plus a slightly smaller amount for Stellantis. And that also is then the losses of all of the suppliers, the layoffs, and the other things that are going on. Although Ford and GM might be getting close on pay and benefits, that's kind of the rumor that's making the rounds in the press. This week, the strike did expand to additional facilities that were Ford and GM related, while Stellantis did not have an expansion of the strike. Sean Fain, president of the United Auto Workers, said that their progress on Stellantis was such that they did not want to strike any additional facilities. Kind of a side note, Mack Trucks, which is owned by Volvo, also was in negotiations with United Auto Workers, and they did come to a labor agreement. According to the Detroit Free Press, it's about to get painful. If the strike lasts another week, just in Michigan, there are another 18,500 people that are slated to lose their jobs due to layoff. And these layoffs are not, hey, the strike is over, call everybody back, they'll be back next week. It says that these are potentially permanent losses.
Shuttering. Places
that are absolutely just shutting down. At best, it would be an unknown number of weeks or months that these layoffs would be.
Mm-hmm.
So it's starting to have an impact on the economy. And while that happens, like we reported in the news earlier, Tesla, Rivian, Fisker, and Lucid will be reporting results later this week. These guys are all just rolling along.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that update. Yeah, it's a sobering situation currently going on in the country. YouTube, Ramon Hurt says, yes, Mark on the video, 3 thumbs up. Van Goatwagon, TikTok says, Tuck and Roadster, Mark's viral video title. Okay.
Thomas Curtis joins us again. Kia ora from Tesla Talk, New Zealand. Last time he said it from Aotearoa, which is that's the area where they're at. So Kia ora, Thomas. Glad to have you on.
Okay.
And then Niels on YouTube says that there is an informative Jay Leno's garage video about the Tesla Semi. I saw that was just out this week. I haven't had time to watch it yet, though. He says the gain from going electric is much bigger with trucks than with cars.
Yeah, we had theorized that. You're right. I saw tidbits of it, but it's one that I want to watch, definitely. Thank you for the reminder, Nils.
Yes.
Ramon Hurt from YouTube, he says, I feel for the workers at the suppliers. They don't have any say in this mess.
Yeah, I agree. I do too.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier. You've got the collateral damage just from the strike itself with the automakers. But then you have this huge supporting infrastructure that is also going to, feel the pain of this process.
And there's no win for these people. The suppliers, their prices don't go up. They don't get to pay their people more. All they have is the chance of laying people off.
Yeah.
So that it's a very sad situation for a lot of the suppliers. Well, I think we're coming up on that time, Pete.
Okay. Yes, 11:30, and appreciate as always you guys joining us. We're having fun. We hope that you are. And tomorrow it'll be the Tesla Roadster podcast. Any news we have from Tesla regarding this increase in the replacement battery cost for the Legacy Roadster, we will share with you then.
Mm-hmm.
And Thursday, we'll have the same EV podcast that we do today. And then Friday, we're not going to have one this Friday.
I don't think we're going to have one this Friday. Claude and Elvis are out of the office this Friday, and I don't know that they got anybody to back them up at this point.
And then Sunday, it'll be Jesse and I, and we'll collect some interesting things to share with you Sunday, and maybe I'll go on another rant, and we'll see how that one.
Yeah, and everybody go watch our other rant, please.
Yes. Again, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Take care.